member of Congress is, oh, you want me to come up? They're just that's kind of the role they play. So she's dying to come up here and help us out today.
Not for like talking,
but it's very important that
since he worked with my favorite political consultant that
Yes.
I like a lot, and he told me that he was telling all these good things about me, so I better keep it up.
If anybody was here trying to thinking they could get the Congresswoman's business, my good friend is her consultant, so back off.
Good job.
I'd like to start first with, we also have a few people online, and pardon if I mispronounce your name. Noria, are you there with us? Nora? If you'd like to introduce yourself real quick, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sorry, repeat that?
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes. So hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Nora Ali. I do brand development and marketing and strategies, but I also focus heavy on Africa, particularly when it comes to investment relations and government relations. I'm based in DC, but I'm also based in East Africa, Kenya.
And also online joining us tonight is, again, pardon my mispronunciation, is it Mila? Mil? Sigar?
Michael Ziegler.
Sigler. Miguel Sigler? If you tell us a little bit about who you are, I think you're muted, right? There you go.
I could say good evening to you guys, good afternoon, but to me, I would say late night. Okay. Hello from Slovenia. I'm also, I would say, public affairs consultant, or you would name it, I would say, governmental affairs, or the word, which is a nasty one, which we like, lobbying. So I'm a lobbyist, registered. I reside in Slovenia. I do have my international company, which is called MC Public Affairs, and I do the job across the European Union states, and also I'm present in Brussels, and I'm present also in Luxembourg, but we deal, how to say, cross-border lobbying as well. So it means on the level of the EU, it means EU institutions, that means Council of Europe, Parliament, European Commission, and then also in the national governments. And as well, you know, we were a bit involved as well as Slovenia just became a, I would say, member of the Security Council, with a new permanent seat. So we were lobbying that as well. And we just had also the conference, international conference called Lobbying Regulations as well. I'm also the chairman of the, I would say, the Slovenian Association of Legal Lobbying. And later on, I'll explain more.
Good. Thank you very much. And now to our panel that's here in front. I'll defer first to our Congresswoman who is here with us, if she'd introduce herself.
Victoria Sparks, representing the great state of Indiana.
And then we also have Thaddeus, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Thaddeus Walls. I'm a political consultant originally from Chicago, now based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Glad to be here with you all.
And again, mispronunciation. Is it?
Oh, yeah, try it.
Oh, let's try it. Okay, we'll give it a shot here. Ejike? Ejike. Adi. Go ahead.
Hey, my name is H.K. Bono. I was born and raised in Nigeria, but I live in Pakistan. And I don't like to classify myself as a lobbyist, but I invest in relationships. So that, you know, I do private encounters with political people in order to get a message across. So I do that for clients domestically, and I do that for clients internationally.
And we're all here up on this panel to discuss kind of leading industry standards in business lobbying. And I'd like to throw the first question to the Congresswoman. Well, I'm putting you on the side.
This one must be in panel about women's leadership. But
Exactly.
Okay, we'll talk about lobbying.
Exactly. In leadership, there, when it comes to a lot of things have been said in this country regarding transparency and integrity and access in Ukraine as compared to the United States and Western Europe. What is your position on leadership and also in lobbying for on those issues of is integrity, transparency, and access vital to a democratic system where people have access to their leadership?
Well, do I have supposed to talk on this or not?
Yeah, I think that one there. Is it on?
Doesn't make any noise.
It's for Zoom because
We need to do that?
for Zoom.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit since I understand the liberation in the United States a little bit better. And I'll tell you, there is definitely, important things in the legislature when you want to work on issues, right? You want to talk with people. There is not, sometimes lobbying has a bad rap, but it's nothing wrong with groups actually represent an interest and lobbying for interests of some organizations. And if they're good lobbyists, they could be very well informed on issues. They could provide you information from inside that you might not be able to get it otherwise. I think that is the responsibility of you as legislator to make sure that you remember who you represent. And you remember that I always joke, there is no lobby for the people here. So we are the only lobby for the people. So it's important to have a transparency where we as a representative have a mechanism where we actually do what the right thing for the people and we can communicate with that. Like tomorrow I have hearings on, on some beef processing. So I met with all sides of that issue. I met today with my district, I met with farmers. I'm going to talk to monopolies, even though I don't like them, but I want to hear their case. So I think it's important to educate legislators also and have a transparency to make sure that legislators are not influenced because, you get bad apples everywhere. So I think it's important not influenced by these decisions. So I think lobbies can be useful, but can be harmful if there is no transparency, lack of transparency, and if the system can be abused, and it's very important that people have this mechanism for that.
And I was going to toss this next one to Nora. Is she still with us there? But I guess not right now. I'll throw it to Mikhail. What's your position on those issues of transparency, integrity, and access in your business leadership dealings?
I think that this is one of the most important ones. I cannot even think of business without transparency, integrity, and and also without the ethics in this respect. And of course, I would think it has to be legal, especially now within the European Union. And due to the conference which we just had, and we had all the states in Slovenia. And there were, from the United States, Canada, Brazil, South Africa, and as well all the European countries. And there was also European Commission and OECD. And we have touched the base regarding as well about transparency. And as you know, the process itself, it has a transparency register. It means when you are lobbying and when you have the access to the European politicians or the members of the European Parliament, European Commissioners, so you have to be as a legal entity and as an individual registered. And as well, you have to perform, you have to have declare the budget. It's almost the same as in the United States. The only thing it is that what we have discussed also the Foreign Agency Act because Brussels didn't have it. And now with the Ukraine-Russian war, we know that sometimes could be bypassed, and some of the weak democracies and some countries which they don't have, a strong legislation, that some country, if you don't check the background, maybe will go via and they will establish some company, I don't know, in Croatia, Bulgaria or so, but are actually Russian entities or from another side. So there will be much more strict regulations in the way, and the OECD, they just had also Integrity Week in Paris, and they will have the new regulations, the new recommendations after the 10 years of the, introduced recommendations to the legislations. We as Slovenia as part of that, EU as well, I think also in the United States and so all the others. So there is, for the transparency view, no exemptions. What does it mean? That everyone, in our countries who wish to deal access to the politicians should be in the register. And that means that, and the transparency is very important, and it means also that what will follow, it will follow also all the bureaucratic rules, and it means that we'll have more responsibility as well, and we will have to, put a lot of double checks with whom we are working, and that we are, according to the laws. And but there are also some of the new things. The lobbying word, they wish to, to change, and there were some participants at the OECD meeting which they say that should be RPE, which it means responsible political engagement. So I don't know, now governmental affairs, public affairs, lobbyists, but responsible political engagement. So it means, it tells a lot actually. It tells, it's linked towards the transparency and integrity and all the ethics. And you know that Europe had a big scandal about Qatarians and all the others trying to influence European Parliament, and there were some bribes going on. But, that's bad, right? That's what we all wish to prohibit.
Before I throw the question to one of our next panelists, if any of you have spent any time here in DC on Capitol Hill, you'll hear buzzers every so often associated with clocks and lights on the clocks and everything else, which is usually an indicator for the members of Congress that they have a vote and they have to be somewhere. And our Congresswoman who's joined us tonight is in the same position. She has a limited amount of time she can spend with us, and I wanted to just throw out to her, can you share with us on some of your thoughts on leadership? What are some of the key things in leadership that you would like to share with us tonight?
Well, just kind of follow up quickly on the other things. I think we also need to make sure that we have enough standards on elected officials. There is no conflict of interest. And sometimes, a lot of times, politicians like to punt this issue and say, oh, we're going to register everyone else, but don't want to hold themselves accountable. I think it's important that you as a politicians also transparent and you disclose what you are doing and if and what you are not doing. And I think it's important to have the transparency and you are not engaged in the conflict of interest. And sometimes, if we look, we have some federal or state laws, and sometimes we're actually not as good as we should be. But that's a different conversation. But we should hold ourselves also accountable, not just everyone else. As related to leadership, I'll be honest with you. Unfortunately, political system is not set up to do. Leadership, political system to, for some reasons, set up not to cause harm, especially in the United States. We have spread powers, so, spread around different states and make sure that no one can do harm. So it's very, very hard to get anything done in the system, and it's meant to be. But when you punt the issue for too long, then it accumulates a lot of issues. And unfortunately, when you don't have leaders that have a backbone, because leading is taking tough political decisions because somebody's not going to like. If I sit here and blame the other side day and night, I'll get reelected. When I pick some battle, somebody's not going to like it. But ultimately, that's about some leaders willing to pick some battles at some crucial moments of time for the country and willing to say, this is important for the people, and I'm not going to worry about it. Who's going to attack me? Who is going to do what? I think it's the right thing to do, and I only care that it needs to be done for the people I represent. And that would take, guts. It take communications, it take relationship, and find some other people around you who'd be willing to go with you, because it's very difficult if you don't have a team. So that's why developing relationship and working with other people, and when you go in the war, that willing to go in the trenches with you because they know that you'll be with them. It's extremely, extremely important, like in any other, in business and politics. So attracting the leaders that are willing to do it is very difficult, and I think we as a country need to do a better job with that too. And we have young Republicans. I was just talking to them next door, and we need to raise our new generations of leaders that are willing to get with knowledge and understanding, because political process is complicated. If you're from other countries and think it's not messy here and hard, you need to see money spent and what you're hearing on TV. It's enormously difficult You have to survive. The strongest survive. It's enormous amount of money and intellect comes after you in opposition. You go into tough races and you have a machine coming from you. You have to be agile, fast, and have good people helping you and good teams. And building that relationship with team when you know that is extremely important. But I think, as you know, it takes few percentage of people to get stuff done in any country. And I think it doesn't take 80%, 20% can do a lot or less. More major battles were won by very few. But I think if people see you do the right thing and be authentic, people will go with you and never be afraid to pick a righteous fight and righteous battle. And we have a lot of them happening right now. We actually don't have the votes for that reason tonight. So, and we can debate if it is righteous or not, but and that's one thing. I'll be honest with you. I had huge fights with the other side, Democrat Party, and I'm very far apart in a lot of issues. Very hard for me to find common ground, even if I was able to do it when it was very important for our national security. But I hold my party even more accountable than the other side, because this is the party that I'm part of. And I'm not, this is the party that I can hold more accountable. I elect these people, I put pressure on these people. We are the team, so never be afraid to challenge your own side when your side is not doing the right thing. And I think that is the toughest I see for a lot of people in political process, because you have a machine coming at you, and then you will be worried that, that you will not be supported by that. But I think that is tests your strength and determination, and people will see that you're willing to do it, and if you not going to win the people, there are a lot of good things. You can drink champagne on the beach, there are a lot of things you can do. Politics is not the only thing, but you want to look back and say, I did what I could in the circumstances I was in, and I did the best what I could, and never regret that you didn't. You could have, you should have, and you didn't do something that was important. And that's something we need to raise our children doing that. And as a huge fan of the republic, and I know that there is a lot of, we don't have a pure democracy in the United States for a reason. Pure democracy usually leads to dictatorship. It's not, Aristotle said, not me, and Plato. But I think we have republic for a reason, and I think it's important to educate politicians and political people that what is the meaning of republic, what do we have to fight, what do we here, because America, in the United States, we protect people's rights to life, liberty, and property. We protect. This is that I test myself. It's a bill that I'm introducing. I have a huge debate this week. The bill I'm introducing is going to be protecting people's rights. And I'm going to stop because I'm not here to come to a politician to listen to me. But I think it's important to raise people with strong views and ability to, fight for the people. And I think a lot of times it's very tough, but we need to have more leaders like that. That is leadership, when you do something that is tough and you're tested in tough circumstances, because ultimately big decisions are very difficult.
And before, if you have to leave, I wanted to make sure I got this question in. Which university did you like the most? National Economic University or Indiana University in Purdue?
Listen, I'll tell you, I actually came from University of Life, okay? This is the best.
That's
you
a
learn.
politician answer.
No.
Both
Listen,
of them
this
I
is
like.
the true, the true. I mean, education is, I always say, education is a good thing to get your foot in the door, maybe, and I came from fancy college, University of Economics, when I came to the United States, and no one cared about my fancy degree. I'm like, OMG, what I'm going to do? And my first job was a bank teller for $8 an hour, and I learned a lot about the country and got, and learned about that I need to become, people were saying CPAs are smart. That's the whole reason I became CPA, because I could get another job. But in reality, in everything you do, if you learn, I had the tough races, and I'll be honest with you, and my party didn't support me too, okay? I fought my own party before I fought the other side, but the reason why people supported me, because I was in the trenches, and I learned two things from ground up. Any job, any profession, when you learn it from ground up, I knew how my signs are going to be the best, if the wind is not going to blow them up, because I put them for decades for other people. So I know how to create my signs quickly. I knew the people knew me, and I was able to organize much quicker. This relationship are very valuable, especially when you with people when you don't need them.
and you just help them because you truly believe in the same cause. A lot of people were willing to work 24/7 for me because they believe in me. And that is something you cannot replace. You cannot pay people to go and in a huge fight and go in where really going to be attacked. People were threatening their businesses will get burned down if they support me. It was a tough races. You don't think that the stuff is here is tough. You can ask Tim. He knows the whole, his, because it was very tough race. But, that people will go with you when they see that. And that's important. And that's your life skills and you learn. So all of these degrees are good. I'm not against people doing degrees. But ultimately, you learn from experience and you become good only by doing something. So like when I need to do, like I do some farming, but when I today need tomorrow to have a discussion about beef processing monopolies, I actually went to livestock producers this morning because I am not processing meat. I don't know how to do it, even though I do soybean farming. And I learned a lot of good things from them and the policy making. And anything you do, go to the people that do the work for decades. If you know how to shoot javelins, you need to go talk to people that done it for years, okay? You go to the right people because only experience teaches you and you become the best and not be afraid to pick some dirty jobs because, they teach you to be tough and they teach you the knowledge that you'll never learn anywhere else. So that's something. So University of Life is the best skills and try to do the work and whatever life throw you in, never be afraid to do it.
Good. I'd just like to thank the Congresswoman for taking the time to come and speak to us today. And if any of you are ever in Kokomo, Indiana, stop by her district office and say hello to her staff.
Yeah, I'm close to Indianapolis, and we have, Hamilton County, Indiana, #1 to raise family in the country, ranked by Forbes magazine, the one I represent. #1 in the country. So if any of you need to move, this is one of the blessed places for children. So thank you.
Congresswoman, for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to throw back to Noura. Are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
I wanted to throw you the question that we had asked a couple of the other folks on our panel here. Leadership in and around the world. A couple things. How do you rank the need for transparency, integrity, and access to government officials?
So for me, as far as just within government relations, public affairs, lobbying arena, I would say transparency. It's very important, and also integrity. And I feel like everyone kind of highlighted that, but I think for me, as far as yes, there's been abuse of lobbying practices, right, and having certain groups influence for their special interests. But at the same time, as individuals who are in this arena, we have to be conscious. And I truly believe that if you're able to be consistent, if you're able to be transparent, if you're able to hold some key values that showcase your integrity, you're able to create, we don't need to have losers. We can create win-win solutions for everyone, for all parties involved. And when it comes to leadership, within the arena, I think we need to be mindful of how we're presenting this, how we're also pushing different interests or different agendas that might be of interest of whoever we're supporting. Let it be different NGOs, let it be government or interest groups, or let it be corporate companies. And just with that, for me, is the narrative and the view that the world has of lobbying, it does leave a bad taste, right? But I think we're in a unique position right now to change that narrative. I've seen some good work be done. I've seen some great, bills and policies get passed by having the right people push for it, because there's that sense of passionate and purpose behind it. But at the same time, you have corporate companies that have certain things that, they're interested in, and they need that support to push it. So it's like having key, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, that's actually impactful. But at the same time, be consistent when it comes to being transparent, and also having these values and just norms that have that infuse integrity into it.
Thank you. I'll go back to our board that's panelists that are here. Enrique, can you give us a few examples of cooperation in Africa between leaders and lobbyists, and whether the relationship they have there is effective in finding solutions to the problems that people face?
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, lobbying and leadership is a factor that is driven by where is the people, how mature are they in their own political environment. Every politician is local. So if the way lobbying in Africa, I don't want to say Africa, it's just 54 African countries, and they don't even get along amongst themselves. So if you talk at particular countries, for instance, I was born and raised in Nigeria, do they have lobbyists? How are the lobbyists, are they regulated? Or are they doing it by relationship? So, the lobbying industry doesn't exist in most undeveloped countries because it's more like a relationship thing. If your uncle, your relation is the president or the senator, you just go in and talk to them about what you want to get done. But looking at that, how has Africa achieved a level of growth based on the situation and things that they are facing? They still haven't been able to do it. So lobbying hasn't really helped. Leadership hasn't really helped, because I believe leadership has to be something that produces an outcome that benefits everybody. So if you're looking at those countries in Africa, which African country has emerged to a level that you said they are developing or they are developed, even though they are lobbying and then they are also relationship. So, and then you come to America. Of course, when you want to lobby, you have to register, you have to know who you're talking to, and all those information is disclosed. So transparency is very important. But in those countries, it's not transparent. Even in America now, we have issues where if it's government by the people, for the people, why do we have classified information? If we're actually talking about representing the people, so why are we hiding something from them? So there are a lot of challenges in this industry about leadership and lobbying, and what do we disclose and how do we disclose it? Because if we are really transparent, then your representative should tell you everything that is coming across their desk and how that is going to impact them.
Thaddeus, I'd like to throw out a kind of a similar question to you on, can you give us some experiences on how relationships between state and businesses in the United States, and in particular in an area you'd like to touch on, how those have been successful, and what you think needs to lead to those cooperations being successful?
In my opinion, it's kind of like a catch-22, depending on what the stakeholders or opponents would deem as such. One thing I can think of is how it's 2023, so at the end of the Obama administration, how the Trans-Pacific Partnership, how that was going through Congress in terms of getting support for it, in terms of economic and quality of life outcomes. But then you saw like a lot of activists, labor unions, and corresponding groups push back on this bill, saying like, hey, this thing isn't going to lead to some of the things it says it's going to do. So really, success is this bill going to improve or change someone's life for the positive or the negative? And I feel like that's where the debate is, and unless your pockets or livelihood is affected, that really determines what's successful or potentially fails.
And I'll throw this out, and then we'll work around the table and the Zoom again. But keeping it with you, is it important when you start these conversations? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was only about, I think it was about 700 companies, or less than that, had offices here in Washington. Today, there's well over 3,000 companies that have offices in Washington. Is it important to start these dialogues before a crisis occurs or before a piece of legislation starts? Is that an aspect of leadership on the business level of being engaged before you really need to put out a fire or see a piece of legislation passed?
See, now that's too much logic and makes too much sense. Proper preparation prevents poor performance, but unfortunately, we govern by crisis. We make decisions in calamity. So part of it, in my opinion, is I don't want to say like a cultural change, but until decision making gets out of short-term thinking, I feel like either we'll keep going in these loops until we hit a critical mass of, I don't say like a new generation of leaders, but like you had made this point earlier with messaging and different experiences in different parts of the world, and really just taking that time to like not only build coalitions, but also taking the time to understand not only what's going on like locally, statewide in your country, but also what's going on the other side of the globe. And once you realize like, hey, different countries, different standards, how can we bring everyone on a even playing field? But then the question is, will an even playing field benefit everybody only or select few? And typically commerce is in the best interest of profit and not necessarily people. So really people have to ask themselves, are you going to choose people or profits? And that's its own debate within itself.
And I'll throw this back to Nora. In your experience in your part of the world, do business leaders wait until there's an emergency or a crisis before they take to building these relationships, or are you looking for your clients to start relationships so that they exist when a crisis does come about?
Definitely create those relationships beforehand. I think it depends on the overall strategic plan of the organization. What we do is, for example, if there's a strategic plan that you have in hand, depending on what, if it's your yearly plan or 5 years, is understand who those stakeholders are, engage with them, building those relationships ahead of time, so that when a crisis do come, because crises do happen literally on a local level, right? I'm more speaking for, I guess you could say, corporate clients. Let it be on a local level, let it be international. You have those relationships, so you're not just call it stakeholders or decision makers. So it's really understanding the strategy of the client. If they don't have a strategy, creating the strategy for them, and then from that, doing the engagement with the key stakeholders that they most fit for what they're trying to achieve.
And the same question for Mihail Sigler, and then we'll go back to our last panelist here.
Yes, I can relate to that well. With our clients, first of all, it's very difficult if they are too late. They have to be, when there is a crisis, usually it's very, very late in the process. So, and if you have responsible clients and responsible businessmen, they're following what's going on with the politicians, with the government, and so on. And it's very, easy then to start with the corporations. But sometimes you can see that maybe some how to say, extraordinary things from the government comes, and there are some, how to say, bad political decisions. Of course, they have to act right away, right? It means. And in such a way, of course, we also react. We see what are the consequences. But the thing is that you have to be, how to say, prepared on time. For us, we are actually, it's the same as in every attorney law case, or when you are bringing the case in front of the court. I say when you, and with us, with the lobbying, when you are bringing the case up to the politicians, we have to build the case with everything. And what we use, usually we do, how to say, all the strategic plan and communications plan, and with those plus and minuses, and how to say what our access should be, and what will be the timeline, and what will be the strategy in place. So that's it. I think it's not different than in any other country, but it's important.
And for Zhik, I would like to throw out this attitude. And you have to excuse me if I use a lot of American acronyms and idioms in this discussion, but there's an old political saying that was coined by President Truman the buck stops here. He was the president of the United States. He had that sign on his desk. He was the head of the country, and the buck stopped with him. Is that important for business leaders, the CEOs of these companies, to understand that their position is they're leading their companies, they're the ones who are the face of the company, and that they have to take a position of leadership with regards to furthering the business that they're representing?
I mean, very good question. So the buck stops here is in fact very applicable in the case of developing countries. So for instance, you go to Africa or Nigeria or Ghana. You go to Ghana, the only person important in Ghana is the president. You go to Nigeria, he's the president and the 36 other governors. You go to so many other African countries. So if you want to get access to mineral, say in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, you don't have to go to any business person. You just go straight to the president and say, Mr. President, I'm interested in XYZ, and he will give you a bunch of army people to follow you to go start mining. So these are some of the challenges in developing countries. At least in America, you have businesses that introduce legislation or policy changes. In the case of Africa, in the case of Nigeria, since 1999, when they went into democratic rule, no professional group in Nigeria has succeeded in introducing a legislation for banking, for real estate, for foreign exchange, for interest rate reduction, for water supply development, because if the president doesn't like it, it's not going to work. So these are some of the challenges developing countries have. Who brings the idea for solution? Of course, when crises happen, everybody's going to rally to solve because it's a reactionary thing. But what you want to do is how do you prevent those things from happening? And so the buck stops here. Maybe that's where the African presidents got it from, this guy, because everything stops with that. In Nigeria, like I said, it's one president and 36 governors. If the president said, I want a road to be built from here to there, it doesn't matter. Tomorrow you see tractors start bulldozing things. There are no impact studies, there are no right-of-way acquisitions, there are no something like that. But in America, somehow the people are able to do what? Resist or at least participate. So the rest of the world doesn't work that way. Go to South American countries, go to South Asian countries, the presidents are the most powerful individual. And that's where we have the world we have today. So the professionals, if we can engage our legislative arms and begin to have these policy changes, because the African politician, again, the Nigerian politician says, you are advising me, I'm already the guy who is selling this boat. So if either you come with me or whatever you say is not going to work. And that's just the nature of the business over there. So every politician is local, you said that. But over there, they claim it and they own it. And they will tell you, until I'm out of here, that's why you have people like presidents for life. Because as long as they're still in that office, if they don't like you, nothing you say is going to work. So that's preemptive or progressive idea of, hey, let's do this legislation. I'll give you an example. When I came to America, I was fortunate to be getting into real estate. I studied it in Nigeria, came, and I went back. And I said, here are some of the things we can do about land use. Okay, in American Constitution, there's, if you're going to take people's property, that's constitutional provision. You got to pay their market value. So we can do that to give people the ownership. They look at me as like, that's an American thing. It don't work here. So oil in Nigeria, in America, oil belongs to what? If it's in your land, you have the mineral rights. But in those countries, it's a national right. So it doesn't matter, they can evacuate you, displace you, and get the mineral they want. So you go to the part of Nigeria where all this oil is being drilled, is an environmental disaster. Because again, the professionals cannot engage the political people to say, hey, this is how we do it. In 2013, I went and gave a paper on how to pay for compensation. When I finished all of that, they said, Edward, just go back to Dallas. This is not how we do things. So this is the resistance to change is also part of the challenge that leadership has not produced for a lot of developing countries. Because they don't want things to change. because somebody again is benefiting from it. You know, most of these African countries, they say they are billionaires. When you start to describe your political figures as very rich people, your country is in trouble. Hmm? When your president is a billionaire, you are in trouble. I mean, or whatever that is, they become a billionaire while in office. Your country is in trouble because obviously they are doing things that are not benefiting your country.
And Katerina has empowered me with special powers, so the buck stops here with me. So I'm going to give everyone on our panel about 1 minute to 2 minutes to give me one specific point that you believe is important as a business leader. And we'll start with Thaddeus. Go ahead.
In order to understand any problem, you have to understand who benefits.
Okay. Miel Siglar, what's one thing that you would tell a business leader, something that they should possess or act, how they should act as a leader?
One of the, which we see with the more important things, the business leaders, and we will say our clients as well. If you don't have a vision, that's a problem. It's very difficult to have a client or a business leader without a vision.
And Noura, in your part of the world, and we're very fortunate to have people from all over the world here so we can get a wide view, and we'll see how this changes or if they all mix. One thing you would tell one of your clients who is a business leader, this is what you must have as a leader.
I would say it's just having the understanding of having a solid strategy that's implementable in the country that you're in.
Gotcha. And what would be, coming back to you, the one thing that you would look at somebody and say, as a leader in your community, as a leader in your business sector, you must?
For me, must is when I look at the factors of production is relationship, the human capital. How do you deploy it in order to get an outcome that suits you as well as the people that you are going to be doing that? So, relationship.
Gotcha. Let me just run. So vision was a big one. Understanding the issues, and have a relationship with people. Danny, what was the one that you threw out?
In order to understand any problem, understand who benefits from it.
There we go. So we can all walk out of here today and be better business leaders in our own period. And now I'd like to open it up to any questions that everybody may have. Anybody here in the room has a question, or if anybody on Zoom has a question?
I have a question. So, Mr. Opa, can you explain us in main countries of Africa, like Nigeria, Kenya, how lobbying work now? So I understand how corruption works because in Eastern Europe it's the same, unfortunately. So no, we also have practices when people who first, second people became very rich in this position. So for me it's very resonating. But still, no, for example, in Eastern Europe, professional associations work well as, lobbying tool. So association of steel production, association of energy efficiency, association of green energy, association of farmers, European Business Association, it works well. So what works well as a classical lobbying tool in Africa and maybe in several countries, what's the difference?
Well, again, I would say if you know where the president is going to be attending a wedding, or a funeral, or throwing a party for the graduation of, any of you, just be over there. And that's your lobbying. And then before you just make a donation. Let him see you visibly, because that is what counts for them. I mean, I serve on some boards and commissions in Texas. There are, a lot of us cannot ride in the same cab, because there's fear of forming a quorum. If there are 5 of us and 3 of us are attending something in my house, if a quorum is automatically formed. So there's a fear we're going to be talking about, issues that maybe come up in the board. But in Africa, it doesn't exist. So there's no formalized lobbying group or laws that say you cannot do this. You just go, or if you find an in-law or a former girlfriend, because there are a bunch of them they have, and say, hey, I want to talk to the president. I mean, you want to buy oil in Nigeria, you don't have to go to NNPC, the National Petroleum Corporation. You just find who the minister is. Okay, is the minister going to London for it? Just go over there and wait, and you get the oil. So like I said earlier, formalized economies, like the U.S., where we now have conflict of interest, disclosure, requirements, open meeting records, and stuff. Who you met and what did you talk about? It has sort of brought some sensibility, to the lobbying thing. But in those other countries, no. Do you have money to shake in front of somebody? That's your lobbying, and you get what you want.
But when Americans work in Nigeria, what tools they use?
Oh, what tool they use is just basically, again, what is the American interest in Nigeria? The crude oil.
Raw materials.
Yeah?
No, any raw materials.
That's what I'm saying. So they don't need to do any, through any of the trade association. They find the president, because the president approves it. He calls in the minister who is over that particular sector and said, get it done for grant. That's it. There's no, in fact, the legislature so oftentimes don't even know what is done until it's done. So there's not a chain of command in terms of processes like, okay, you want to buy the oil, submit your request, or bid on the block. Just know somebody. And that's why every Nigerian knows everybody. Because they can get you, anything you want.
But see, that's not specific to Nigeria. We have the same thing here in this country. We call it doing it the Chicago way.
But at least you're afraid that if you do it Chicago way here, they catch you, there's a trouble. But over there, yeah.
Now with Alderman prerogative, you won't.
I would like to add a little bit to that question about lobbying in Africa. So I first would love if people do not generalize Africa. It's multiple countries. Everyone moves differently. Lobbying, it's a term. I get it. There is legal laws that's being implemented and so forth in different countries. But there is cultural norms. There is certain things. There's certain principles in certain ways. Granted, yes, if you have a certain influence, certain power, certain money, you're able to push certain things if you come from a certain family. But it's not as general as like all countries are the same, and also like it's not as general as, hey, if you have a lot of money, you can do whatever you want to do. You are in Africa. There's certain structures in place for certain countries. I just want to highlight, like for example, I guess I'm from Somalia, and I know that there's this narrative and perception that the world has of Somalia. But as someone who's actively pushing certain initiatives and certain things, and our country is being rebuilt from when it comes to our systems. But for you to truly push something forward from a business standpoint, you do have to go through multiple layers. You have to get the approval of the regional state. From that, you need to get the approval from a certain ministry for them to approve whatever plan or whatever project you have going on. And then from that, you get the approval from the actual federal level. So granted, there is options of moving differently if you want. And for East Africa particularly, yes, if you come from a certain family, if you have really deep ties with the government that's in office at that time, there is more leeway, I would say. But it would be great if we lump Africa together, because every country, even within the countries, the ways that the systems are created, it's unique to the people there.
Michal, I'd like to ask you, you're dealing with in the European Union, but also in the European Union, there's the individual nations that make up the European Union. Do you have to lobby the European Union at the same time you're lobbying, let's say, the French government, or is there a pecking order? Who comes first, and how do you move down and present your clients' cases?
Thank you for a very interesting question, right? Because sometimes it really gets complicated, but that means it depends on the client and what you lobby. If you are just lobbying one of the national, let's say the governments for your client and parliament, that's very easy. it means the just environment. But the thing it is, when it comes that the legislation is needed in all among the states of the European Union. And for example, especially when you have the trial. For example, we have European Commission, we have the European Parliament and European Council, right? The Council of Ministers, and this is on EU level. So it means that European Commission, it represents the interests of the EU, whereas the European Parliament represents the interests of the people, and whereas the European Council represents the interests of the states, so the national governments per se. So, and every legislation which is dealt is actually dealt by the trial. It means it's a proposal which comes out from the European Commission, and then it's dealt with the European Parliament, and in the end it's voted in the Council. So it means that you have all the conglomerate of the interest when you are lobbying the EU, right, which will impact all the other states. And everything, it's there. So it means first you have the lobby European Commission, and one of the, departments in which are, there is a DG Health, you have to lobby this, the DG Health, and afterwards when it comes to the European Parliament, of course, you will then lobby, the different political groups within the Committee of Health. And it means that you have to access different, members, different parliamentary groups members, and usually, of course, you will see, if you see the Germany, their political group might be very big, right? Whereas maybe they will have 60 members of the parliament, whereas small Slovenia will have 7, right? And France, for example, will have, 50. So of course it counts that you go to the big ones, right? But the important thing it is who actually represents the case, or he is a rapporteur, so responsible person from the political group, and maybe the shadow rapporteur of this, directive in the parliament. And then in the end, when everything comes, right, and especially when you have to deal it with the national governments, you have to also lobby the national governments. And sometimes it's tricky. Sometimes maybe you ask the big guys, from Germany, France, and then you have Spain and all the others to lobby. But sometimes also the small states, as we are, you can also be very successful and Luxembourg because it's very, or Belgium because it's very easy access. So it actually really depends. And the most important thing in it says, of course you have we have the rotating presidencies, and you probably heard about it. Right? Every country is actually holding the presidency of the EU for 6 months, and actually is doing the trio. And it means trio. It means that in 1 year and a half you have the agenda. In this agenda, it will be what all 3 countries actually will be doing. Which directives, which cases, which agendas, what is important for you at the moment, and it's a timeline, right? It's everything is set up, and of course at those times, it's some of the countries, for example, there's Portugal, Spain, or who is holding the presidency, it becomes very important. So you have to actually fly to this state, right, and actually. To speak with the local ministers there, if you wish to actually influence the politics of the EU, of the whole of the EU. So it's a bit complicated system. When you know it in the detail, it's actually fun to do it. We love to do it. It's very difficult and challenged to understand for the clients, but there we are. There we are, the lobbyists.
You ruined my closing joke by mentioning Luxembourg. I had a whole Luxembourg thing I was going to throw out, but you mentioned that. And I'm being told that the buck no longer stops with me, and I am being told that we need to wrap it up. So I would like everybody to thank our late night guests who are on Zoom here for participating, and our panel too. So everybody, a big round of applause. Thank you for participating and your input. Very informative.